Good morning, everyone. It's really great to see so many people here today. And I think there was a really interesting discussion we heard from the first group of panelists. So for sure, my group of panelists are going to touch on the same matter. But before we do that, I thought we would turn the clock back a little and just talk about COVID. Obviously, that has taken a back seat since the political crisis. But maybe you guys could share with us how COVID has changed your operations in general. Nicholas, maybe you would like to start.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Yes, before COVID, we used to be well settled to work well from our office. Now we are well organized to work from our office, from home, or in any place with an internet connection. The balanced life could be more difficult, but we have to adapt because all the clients are expecting a rapid answer at any time. So we had to adapt our organization.
What about you, Frank?
Yeah, it was, when COVID happened, it was a very busy time for us because we had, first everybody was in lockdown, we had boats on the refit, we had boats in the Caribbean, which couldn't relieve the crew. So that was, that was a big issue. It was very busy for us. And then, let's say, after the first quarter, yachting started to come back, and it became very busy like that. All the safety procedures and with regards to infectious disease and the new regulations that that came up was difficult for us. But now, yeah, we seem to get getting out of it on the other hand, straight into another crisis.
Yeah, sure. Edward, what about you?
Good morning, everyone. So I think in terms of operations, what really changed for us, so a big part of our company focuses on recruitment and selection of crew. So that we really had to readapt because obviously before the human contact was very important, getting to know a crew member before sending it to the owners, sending it to the yacht for final interviews. Now we really prioritize, video calls, phone calls, Zoom meetings, Teams meetings, whatever it is that you can use to avoid physical contact, really. So that was the biggest change when it came to the crew selection, because obviously we couldn't meet the people. We had to really reduce as much as possible the physical contact. Everyone was away. Getting the crew to come where the boat was complicated. We had to readapt that. We're recruiting a lot more locally, whereas before, crewing was a lot coming from South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. I mean, there's, crew members come from all over the world, and we had to change this approach a bit. So I think the operational aspect of that really changed after COVID.
And Andrea?
Yeah, well, obviously it was a big adjustment, like for everybody else. That being said, with Fraser, we already started with 1 day of telework per week for the couple of years before that. So we had a good practice, let's say. And we adapted extremely quickly. We found out that indeed technology that was already available became mainstream, and efficiency was not down at all. Actually, we saw quite a pickup in that. So from a client relation perspective, naturally visiting, having a one-on-one in-person contact has been almost impossible for the first and second lockdown. That being said, also clients have realized the potential of this new technology, have enjoyed it, and were able exactly to let's say, plan more than one meeting with the clients per day without having to lose time traveling from one country to the other. So we actually were able to be, in a way, more in close contact with our clients. And the model has been proven successful to the point that even today, we still only have 2 days at the office in Fraser. We can choose more, but Obviously, we're working pretty well from home, and the time spent in traveling, the decrease in time spent in traveling helps with an increased productivity of our workforce. So overall, I think it's been a positive change.
That's good to know. Thanks for sharing. Nicholas, we have a question for you. Just wondering about insurance, because obviously COVID was a very new thing, and we understand that threw up different covers on restrictions to coverage than the insurers can provide. Would you like to share with us what are some of the significant changes in insurance coverage with regards to COVID?
Yes, COVID increased the amount of claim and the cost of claim in general, particularly for crew health insurance company. We insure a lot of crew members, and a lot of crew were on sick leave, hospitalized, or in quarantine. So the amount and the cost of claim in illness has increased a lot during this pandemic, particularly during the first wave. During the first wave, a lot of crew members were on sick leave for several months. During the second, for several weeks, and now, which is a positive thing, for only several days. In terms of accidents, it increased also the number and the cost of accidents because all the crew members were stressed by the COVID and spent more time on board. We heard that some owners spend 7 months without discontinuity on board, and this complicates the job of all the crew members. There are also new expenses that has to be paid by underwriters. I mean all the related expenses to quarantine, or it was also complicated to join an embarkment. The costs of the plane tickets were increased. So all these things create a large amount of claim and a big challenge for us that cover a lot of crew members, and particularly for repatriation center. The good thing on the health side is that even if a lot of insurance companies have made exclusion for COVID, pandemic, or any other virus, it is very important for our industry that some underwriters continue to protect the member and to pay this kind of expenses.
Has COVID in itself changed the way the owners and captains maybe view the role of a yacht manager? Frank, maybe you can share with us your thoughts on that. Have you had, maybe clients who have asked you to be more cost effective, or maybe they have simply really appreciated the fact that there's someone on the ground taking care of matters for them?
I think it certainly has proven the value of yacht management, particularly when you have, for example, you have an outbreak of COVID and there's a cruise booked very soon afterwards. Just finding new crew, isolating crew, also the procedures on how to prevent infection on board. So yes, I think so. And then I think it was also because of COVID, there was a lot of delays in shipyards on in repairs and the new builds as well. So and to work around that, in my company, we had a lot of problems getting the surveyors out to the boat because it was difficult to fly. So we had to do a lot of surveys by car, and we did surveys by Zoom. So yeah, I think owners appreciated that we did a lot to prevent delays in that. I remember we had a boat in Italy which were doing an extension with a lot of carbon fiber. There's a carbon fiber boat. The people who were working there, we put them on the crew list. Then we had spare parts in the workshop, but the short workshop was closed. But then taxi drivers still could do it. So it was every time there was a roadblock, and we had to find a way to get around the roadblock. I think that was very much appreciated by the owners.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to comment on that as well because so we personally started Yacht Management in January 2020, so we were hit by COVID really just after that. It was a great start for our yacht management career, but what I realized as well is that, as mentioned, having a person on the ground that is in an office not only obviously gives some kind of reassurance to the owner, but also it gives reassurance to the crew, I feel, because they know that they have a team, in the office that can really help and work hand in hand with the captain, because most of the time you also have captains who are doing a lot of the management side when there's not really a yacht manager behind it. And during this crisis, they already had to deal with, the day-to-day, how to adapt to COVID, how to adapt to the restrictions, and a crew member being positive, the yacht being quarantined. So they had a lot going on, and this gave them some kind of assurance, both on the owner side, but also on the operational side for the crew.
Yes, I think there's no doubt that both owners, owning offices, representatives, and captains have understood the added value of a yacht management company within the last couple of years. It's in times of crisis, obviously, that a short-size support, a real short-size support, comes into play and makes a major role into operating a vessel to the fullest of the potential. The proof, to be honest, it's in the number. Since the beginning of 2020, our managed fleet grew by almost 30%. More and more clients have decided to use us as confidants, as consiglieri. They understood the potential and the added value of having someone with an extended fleet that goes through issues that they might incur on a daily basis. Having especially a strong safety management team that updates constantly safety management system with a collate of all the new regulation coming in on a daily basis, everything that has been changed, what are the restrictions. It's definitely a big advantage and overall a cost saving for the client and a big time save for the captain and crew, no question.
And Andrea, do you see that there has been a change in the way the owners are using their yacht now post-COVID?
Well, frankly, in my opinion, not really, or at least not with our fleet and our clients. I believe that since they were able, the clients decided to use the yachts for precisely the intended use, which is an extremely luxurious villa in the middle of the sea to be enjoyed with the loved ones and the ones that have been forced to part ways for a long time. So although indeed there are certain cases of clients using the boat more as a, let's say, a second home or an office, let's say, further away from the rest of civilization, that's not the majority of the cases. Most owners decide to enjoy the yachts for the very reason that they bought it or that they built it. Only one client, to my knowledge, he decided to use it indeed as an office, a day trader. Once he found out the expense of the VSAT, he quickly went back to his office in the US. So no, I believe a yacht is meant to be enjoyed with family and friends. Owners know this very well, better than me for sure. Yeah.
I don't know if this sentiment is shared by any of you in this room, but I wonder whether the COVID crisis is really over. Frank, maybe you could share your thoughts on that, because we still see delays in engineering parts arrival. We also see crew still getting COVID, even though this is much more contained as to when it first happened. So is this crisis really over, in your opinion?
Well, you're talking now about the supply chain issues where everybody is suffering from. So yeah, that is still going on. Yeah.
I think we know how to deal with it better. That's the difference. Because we started during COVID, and honestly, there were situations that we had no idea how to deal with on the spot. I mean, we had questions from the owners about how to proceed, and even ourselves, we had to go and find out the information because everything, as you mentioned, was changing so drastically and quickly. I think now we kind of know how to deal on a day-to-day basis with COVID, and we have obviously the vaccinations that's come in, and everything is kind of a bit more controlled. We're not in the unknown as we were 2 years ago. But yeah, the supply chain clearly is still an issue.
Yes, I definitely second what Edward said. If it wasn't for the supply chain issues and still the huge lockdowns in China, it would definitely be over. The sentiment is definitely that it is over. But obviously, I'm speaking more from a client perspective of someone that already owns a boat or that is ready to charter a vessel, and not exactly from a yard perspective that is still seeing huge delays, increase in prime materials for the build construction. Unfortunately, in that sense, it is not over. And obviously, the world prospect as a whole of the world economic is not the brightest now. So indeed it's not over as a whole, but from a client perspective that owns a yacht, he can definitely enjoy it with the same peace of mind, or close to the same peace of mind that he had 2.5 years ago.
Thank you. So just now turning our attention back to the current political crisis at hand, Nicholas, earlier we heard from the first panel that insurers are withdrawing coverage and they're restricting cover for Russian UBOs. Can you tell us, maybe in your own words, how you have seen firsthand these insurers are restricting coverage? Because we have also heard that all Russian business are being refused by underwriters, whether or not they are linked to a sanctioned individual.
Yes. Well, firstly, to clarify and to say this again and to insist on this, no broker or underwriters are able to provide any insurance to a sanctioned Russian or even sanction of a person of other nationality. It is true for payment processing of premiums and payment of claims. So for the Russian citizens that are not on sanction or not yet on sanction, and maybe really more than all the other clients, the compliance procedure are increasing. So to obtain an insurance coverage for a Russian, we'll have obviously to have the full transparency on the ownership of the vessel. If the UBO is linked to Russia, it will be really complicated for him to obtain a coverage from the EU market or UK market or even US market. What could help if the Russian has dual nationality, if he's or she is established outside Russia, so if he's resident in another country since a long time, and particularly if his source of wealth is not connected or linked to any Russian entity. So for this client, we can, I think that we can still find a solution. The complication is the large amount of documents, so document that the underwriters will request it will not be sufficient to say the name of the UBO, the date of birth, and his nationality. He will have to prove that he has no link to Russia with a supported document, which could be time-consuming, and maybe some underwriter doesn't want to lose time on this.
Okay, so when you say that, I suppose you're referring in general to more of European underwriters and the Lloyd's market in general. Have you seen that there are any other alternatives in the Far East or in the Russian market, for example, as insurance alternatives?
We heard rumors that there was maybe a solution on the Chinese market, and we have asked some leading insurance company in Asia and in the Middle East, and it seems that it's pure speculation. Most of the leading or most of the underwriters that provide coverage for yacht are insured or reinsured in UK, EU, or USA. So there will be an issue in terms of capacity, and I don't think that the client will find a secured underwriters outside this area. The only solution, even if I have not a lot of information on this, but it will be to be insured in Russia.
Okay.
And all the insurance policies are connected to subjectivities reserved, and if the vessel loses classification or be deflagged or any other issue, it could also trigger the coverage in place. So yes, it will be really complicated for Russians to obtain an insurance, excepting if they have dual nationality, they are resident outside Russia for a long time, maybe there is a chance.
Okay, thank you. I feel like the next group of people who have been quite affected by this political crisis are actually crew. You know, they make up a huge part of all this. And maybe, Edward, you want to comment about whether you're seeing more crew applications, more crew CVs from boats that have actually been detained or prevented from, say, leaving the port?
Yeah, so there's definitely been an impact on the crew members. Already there's been a change of crew in the scenery after COVID, and now we have this new scenery coming in due to this conflict, which we've had crew members, you know, coming to our office asking for jobs quite drastically because they decided either they decided to leave the boat because, as they mentioned in the previous panel, they were scared, maybe unnecessarily, but they saw customs coming on board, you know, situations that made them feel like they were not in a secure position. So we do have crew members applying at the moment, trying to find different yachts. We do have the issue that sometimes we have still Russian owners who are European-based or not linked directly. And we have crew members refusing to apply to these positions. So there is clearly an impact on the crew in general. And I think now it's kind of too fresh for them. I mean, everything has been happening the last 2 months. So everyone's still trying to understand, especially crew members, they want to find a secure spot, kind of. You know, the season is about to start. But still, they're scared of being dropped out mid-season also. You know, we don't know what's going to happen unless 2-3 months. I mean, as mentioned earlier, now it's still winter kind of season is starting now, so we don't know what's happening June, July, August. And yeah, we have a lot of applications coming in, people who are drastically searching for jobs.
Yes, I definitely agree. We're not, luckily as Fraser, we're not very exposed to the Russian market. Only less than 6% of our clients are Russians, non-sanctioned, luckily. But indeed, a lot of the crew from Russian vessels, obviously very large vessels, have found themselves without a position, without a job. The only thing I can say is that luckily this has happened at a moment where there was indeed a shortage for crew. We found ourselves before even last year, in need of many professionals, and it was a hard, a hard get. So I'm sure that they will have, let's say, less problems they would normally have in a normal crew market.
Sorry, if I can, I just thought of something now as we were talking about the Russian-owned boats. Something that we've noticed, at least in our company, is that we've had crew members coming in from Russian vessels with also different salary expectations that others. So we've noticed that sometimes there's been situations where they were paid maybe a little bit above the market or a different salary market range. And so we also have that impact now where we have crew searching for jobs, but at the same time, they're not, you know, open to kind of rediscussing what's happening and what the salary range might be for certain positions. At least we've noticed that, especially in the head of departments. So it's quite interesting also to see how that has impacted the crew. And as you mentioned, there's been such a shortage. I mean, last season for us was horrible. I'm not going to lie. Finding people was really difficult. Not only because of the still traveling restrictions that we had, variants coming in every 2 minutes, blocking travelings, whatever. So it was quite difficult for us to find crew, and now we are facing also this issue. So we have a lot of crew members now. There's a lot of people who are joining the yachting, a lot of who are leaving the yachting industry. So there's a bit of a human shuffle going on.
And just the sheer number of new vessels coming in, I mean, they need crew, obviously. The market has been extremely active. We have, I think, 3 deliveries in the next couple of weeks. It's been like that for some time. So I'm sure they'll find a home.
Have you guys encountered issues from suppliers who say have not been able to receive payments on time because of banks doing additional KYC checks, you know, insurers and even suppliers themselves are doing their own KYC checks. So I imagine that could cause, you know, delays in payments to other suppliers, to the shipyards, and also delay in paying crew salaries. I wonder if that has been an issue, Frank, and if you could share with us your experience.
Yeah, well, with my company, no. But the reason is that as soon as one of the owners was sanctioned, I sent out a termination letter. So, and therefore, the letters from the suppliers and from the classification society, the MTU, Caterpillar also withdrew support of sanctioned vessels. That came after that. I was already terminated the contracts. What concerned me a little bit, if I hear about the room, if a Russian has got a European passport, somehow it doesn't matter. I think you need to be very, very careful to try to get around sanctions. So what quite often is that the boats are owned by a proxy, either a family member or another person, and the owning structure is like a layer cake, quite often with some Panamanian trust company in the middle. But I think if you're the manager, you know absolutely who is calling the shots, and we went for that. We did our KYC on the basis of that, and if that person is on the list, we just say, well, I'm sorry, you're a very good client, but we regret we cannot do any business with you anymore.
Yeah, that can be quite a delicate situation to handle. Andrea, maybe you want to say a few words about how this client relationship management has obviously become even more important now.
No, absolutely. As I said before, luckily we had no sanctioned clients, so we didn't have to put the letter in front of them. I know that many other companies had to, companies that were indeed much more exposed than us to such market. For us, exactly, if obviously we know who the UBO is, and we know who the proxy is. In Italy we say prestanome. But indeed, the majority of the clients, of the Russian clients that we do have, do hold European passports. So for the time being, indeed, there is no problem. We continue business as usual. And we're happy to, because indeed, as we spoke earlier, not all Russians are criminals. I mean, this is a war decided by one man. So we continue with no problem in that regards. Nor, luckily, we have had any issue with payments or banks blocking our payments. We always provided full transparent KYC. In the occasion where a Russian client has a double passport, but such passport is not from a EU country, indeed, as many of you know, we have limitation here in Monaco. We could not hold more than 100,000 euros on account, which obviously make things difficult when a payroll is 60, 70,000. So in terms of organization of logistics and on planning, in terms of spending, it becomes more cumbersome, more difficult, but we're happy to do it. We're happy to support our clients in every way possible. It has been difficult. Even for Russian clients that are not sanctioned, they do see the wave coming, indeed. Our role has changed in that regard. We become more and more, let's say, a consigliere. The biggest problem they're facing, obviously, are from the insurance, and I just wanted to second that indeed we tried pretty much anything, Chinese market included, and as you correctly stated, I mean, they're insured in Europe, so nothing to do there, and especially from corporate service providers, which are dropping them around the world, whether they're sanctioned or not. So they find in ourselves a pool of information, a consigliere, as I said, which is a guidance in helping them providing possible solutions, putting them on the table, and then linking up with all the legal departments, corporate service providers, etc., to find a correct solution for a positive outcome in their particular case-by-case situation.
Nicholas, from an insurance broker's perspective, how has your client relationship management been affected?
When I started nearly 20 years ago, we used to insure a yacht or at least obtain a quote with just 10 specifications, the name of an owning company or maybe based in Cayman Island or Maltese, and we receive a quote from 12 or 15 underwriters. This is no more the case at all. Firstly, because there is less underwriters, probably because most of them have lost money on the last 5 or 6 years. So now to insure a yacht, all the underwriters, and I think it's a good thing, and as it was said earlier, for the future, it's very important, because now the underwriters will distinguish the good and the less good client, I would say. So now, when you ask for a quote or an insurance program for a motor yacht, they will analyze, well, firstly, they will check and request the full transparency on the ownership of the yacht, which is quite new. It's just 2 years ago. We used to insure yacht without knowing who was the real UBO some years ago, some months ago. After this, they will obviously analyze the specification of the vessel, the value of the vessel, but also the experience of the crew members, the program of navigation, which is obviously normal. It is very difficult, maybe impossible, to insure a yacht without any classification if the vessel is more than 30 meters. They will also analyze if there is any management, technical or administrative management on the vessel. And what is delicate also is that all the period in yard. So when you ask for a quote or the study of an insurance program, you need to have the right answer and all the details concerning all this post. So yeah, with all this information, you will have a secure underwriters, and it will protect your assets very well on a long-term basis, because if new information are discovered during the claim, which was the case for many files, it could complicate the reimbursement process. So now there is few underwriters, so you have to convince them that you represent a good risk. So, yeah.
You have to almost work twice or thrice harder to just get one boat placed.
Exactly, and at the same time, you have to keep your client happy and manage a good relation with him. So you have to handle all these things. Yeah.
Edward, what about you?
So in our case, we don't have any Russian-owned boats under management because, I mean, we're quite new in the business still. But we've noticed on the crew selection side of the company, so the crew placement and crew training, where we do have Russian-owned boats, there was a bit of a... Obviously, I think everyone kind of knows what's happening, you know, everyone is aware, and it's the only difficult side for us, at least, is trying being the middleman and being, you know, on the crew side, explaining to them that, look, you know, yes, it's a Russian-owned boat, but that doesn't mean that you're going to end up without a job or anything, because the boats we have dealt with were not affected by sanctions. And then there's also on the owner side, trying to explain to them that we're having a hard time finding crew. So that's where the client relation management was a bit more complicated, was trying to really maintain, as you mentioned, the client happy and at the same time dealing with the situation in itself.
I would like to touch on one final point before we move this time to Q&A. I feel like the yachting community has come together in a really big way, you know, to provide humanitarian aid to Ukraine. And I feel it would be nice if you could share what your respective companies have done or are doing in respect of the humanitarian aid. Maybe, Andre, you would like to kick off?
Well, sure. Well, Fraser is always, to be honest, at the forefront of these issues. And together with the majority of the biggest players in the yachting industry, we coordinate a common effort in bringing humanitarian aid to Ukraine on the border of Polish. We filled 2 tiers to the top with anything from clothes to blankets to sanitary products, anything that could help at the time, almost 2 million refugees. Today, almost 5.5. So, indeed, it was. I mean, it is not enough in these situations. These efforts rarely are. But I know for a fact that many of Fraser's employees are very involved in their personal life, in anything from donation to protest to actually hosting Ukrainian refugees. And I'm sure that the other companies' employees are doing just the same. So indeed, there is a cohesive effort in helping them. At the same time, not stigmatizing Russians for the simple fact that they hold a Russian passport.
So when it comes to the crisis, so Monaco actually has done a lot. Also, we've noticed, and we know we're based here, so we really followed all the different various actions that were taken locally, but similar, I guess, to what was just mentioned by Andrea. We've been given the help that we could. So whether it was in supplies, whether it was in clothes, sending food, or organizing gatherings, one in particular that we were really involved at Monte Carlo Sun, so a few weeks ago now. But yeah, this is the way we try, at least, with our personal efforts to bring in some help to the current situation.
I think for our companies, pretty similar. Individually, our staff did their bit, and we made financial contribution to a charity.
Yes, our group also has asked the employee to participate to the collection of goods for Ukrainian people. and we have also participated to different collection of organized by the school of our children.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I would now like to pass the time to you, the audience, to see if you have any questions
Any
for
question?
our panelists.
Ladies and gentlemen, come on, don't be shy. Anyone? Jan, I know, I can count on you, I know that. I don't know why, but I know that.
You mentioned the extra costs of compliance, but the extra costs of running a yacht. How are you changing your budgeting going forward with fuel inflation, wage inflation, etc.?
Yeah, there needs to be an adjustment of the budget. There was a huge adjustment of the budget of the fuel costs. But you know, the owners know that, and they're aware. And we just ask them what the itinerary is. You do that many miles, and that's quite a simple calculation.
I agree. I mean, indeed, there is an increase, but it's not drastic, depending obviously on the itineraries. In terms of crew, there has been a steady increase in the budget, especially for seasonal crew and interior crew. We see the prices going up, but on the overall, it's just a couple percentage points. It's not a major deterrent for the client.
Anyone? Maybe myself, I have a question. Guys, we can reply. Do you think now, we are not speaking anymore about COVID, but do you think that clients are still afraid? Do you think that clients are still looking for solution like the one at the end of the room, Biotech Riviera, they're proposing? Do you think that is something that is still working on, and maybe a new variant of a COVID can happen and they're still afraid about this? What are your thoughts about this future evolution of COVID? Because nobody is speaking about COVID anymore. We're speaking about the Ukrainian crisis, a lot of what's happening, unfortunately, on this region. But I would like to know your point of view on really only on COVID situation. Thank you.
If I can go. Personally, I think the fear has left the hearts of the majority of the clients, and rightfully so. There's not much that we can do. We have been pulling out vaccines that may or may have not worked. Luckily, I mean, the normal course of a virus is becoming ever more spread and ever weaker, and this is what we're seeing right now. So at the end of the day, I think, as I said before, exactly, the repercussion of COVID are still very well affecting the industry and the world in terms of supply chain issues, but the actual fear of the virus is rightfully so diminishing.
I think also we've noticed that there are different type of clients. There's the clients who are still quite not affected, but I don't want to say scared, but they're concerned, because they might have vulnerable members of the family who might be at more risk than others. So we still have some clientele who is not scared, because they're not scared. They know, as we mentioned, they know how to deal with it, but they're precautious. So we have more certifications on board, and some yachts that the owners require to still use some this social distancing or masks, which we don't really see that much anymore. But it depends really on the owner, especially when they're at an older age or exposed to certain illnesses. We have still some situations where we need to explain to the crew that even though the COVID crisis is starting to become more common, or we know how to live with it, you still need to respect some kind of boundaries for the distancing, or in the protocol when it comes to the hygiene on board. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I agree with that. But in a way, things in yacht management are moving very, very quickly. And COVID is last year's problem. And the Russian problem was a problem in March. At this moment in time, I'm spending all my time because we're getting ready for the season. There's a couple of new builds coming online. We got a couple of refits coming out, getting them out of the shipyard. Sales are going through. This is the focus of Yacht Management at the moment. Not COVID. COVID, we have our procedures, we have that sorted out. We have, with the Russians, we terminated the ones which, needed terminating, and now we focus on the other business. And the business is still booming in the yachting industry. And as yacht managers, we're just riding the wave. It's still very good.
We'll see what next year problem is.
No, yeah, I agree. We have to be to not forget the COVID and also procedure. But now it's the start of the season, of the summer season in Europe. The European have a good rate of vaccination. So we have to focus on other things until September or October in Europe. But it could be different for other area. I mean, in Asia, for instance, of the rate of a person is nearly 20 or 30%. So it could be more complicated for this area in Australia also. But we have new issue to focus on now, at least until the end of the next Monaco Yacht Show. We will see in October this winter.
Thank you, everyone, for your feedback. I have just a quick question about the crew. I mean, as we all know, the crew is the heart of our industry. And I think far too often we don't speak enough about them. But, we have a forecast of over 300 to 400 new boats coming onto the market within the next few years. Obviously, we've been going through shortage, obviously alleviated this year somewhat by the crisis. But we've seen a race for wage increase the last few years. My questions to you is, do you see some owners, or you, the yacht managers expert, some ideas, innovations in order to retain crew, not only with money, with other benefits as well?
If I can start. Well, indeed, nowadays, the program of the vessel is much more important than it was a couple of years ago. So the owner are more keen to offer more time off, more rotation, to enable the crew to have indeed a personal life and a family. And this is indeed a great advantage that comes from let's say, the shortage and, let's say, the bargaining power, the increased bargaining power that crew have. So a more, in a way, normal, relaxed life for an otherwise very hectic job.
I think also one of this, in my opinion, is an impact that came out after the pandemic, is that, people don't want to leave for 3, 4, 5 months on a boat and being at risk of getting stuck on board. Or, we've had crew that stayed on board for 1.5 years and then they left for 3 months to catch up on all their time off that they had anyway. So I think, as you mentioned, the rotational is coming much more in place, especially on bigger vessels. And, people want to have the opportunity of doing something with their life that is not only working on board of a yacht. And I think it's also about, funny enough, the way the boat is used. We've seen that crew who tend to be in a yacht that is very quiet or not moving so much, doesn't give them the opportunity of learning, of getting experience, of seeing different sceneries, and therefore they kind of want to change. They want to see something that will bring them a little bit more excitement. Also, crew, especially when they're junior, they're usually very young, and they want to explore, they want to travel, they want to do stuff on board, they want to be able to be part of their day-to-day life. So I think also the activity that the yacht has in general has a big impact on whether they want to stick around or not.
Thank you so much. No more question?
As we're talking about impacts on the yachting industry, what about the below decks reality program? Do you assess any impact from that?
I think it's a little bit exaggerated, personally. I mean, obviously there is, we're all humans. A human working on a boat, living in a confined space, they most of the time spend their time in a crew area, which is usually a lot smaller than the guests or the owner's area. So of course there's going to be a bit of drama here and there, but I think it's inevitable when you have a numerous amount of humans stuck in one place. But I think below deck is a bit too much.
I think half of it is made up, and the reason for that is because the real half is actually worse than the TV program.
Anything else? Thank you so much.